Good evening, everyone. Satkartar, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Assalamu alaikum. And a very good evening, India, buonasera to Italia, and everyone else in Europe. A very good evening to you all. This is the 104th Mēlā of the YaarAnād Virtual Baithak Series, and I'm in conversation today with composer who lives in 3 countries, in Italy, Berlin, in Germany, and in Israel, in Tel Aviv. This, of course, is the series dedicated to the 550th birth anniversary of Sahib Sri Gurū Nānak Dēv. Few words about Luca. Luca Lombardi was born in 1945. He's an Italian composer based in Marino and Tel Aviv. He underwent training in composition in Rome, Florence, Vienna, Cologne, Utrecht, and Berlin, studying under Karlheinz Stockhausen and Bernd-Alois Zimmermann and Paul Dessau. Lombardi is a graduate of Pesaro Conservatory, where he worked under Boris Porena and holds a degree in German language and literature, writing his doctoral dissertation on Hanns Eisler, which was published by Giangiacomo Feltrinelli Editore. Lombardi's oeuvre includes some 180 compositions, including 4 operas, 3 symphonies, orchestral works, solo concerts, and chamber music. Opera houses in Basel, Leipzig, Nuremberg, Rome, and Milan have commissioned work from him, as have Paris's IRCAM, RAI, and Swiss Radio. Lombardi has collaborated with writers including Edoardo Sanguinetti and Heine Müller, and with conductors including Roger Norrington and Zubin Mehta. He has taught and held fellowships around the world, including at Berlin and Hanse Institutes for Advanced Study, and in Japan by invitation of the Japan Foundation. Lombardi is both an important author of musical writings as collected in Construction of Freedom and Other Writings, Cell, Germany, 1985, and the subject of critical study as in a 2014 Musik-Konzepte monograph dedicated to his work. Lombardi is a member of the Berlin Academy of the Arts and of the Bavarian Academy of Fine Arts. He won the SIAE Award for Musical Literature for Faust un Travestimento and Goffredo Petrassi Prize. The President of Germany awarded Lombardi the Order of Merit, of the Federal Republic of Germany in 2015. दोस्तों आज मेरी बड़ी खुशनसीबी है आज मैं मुलाकात तुहाडी करा रहा इटली दे ਜਿਹੜੇ कि 3 देशां दे दरअसल वसनीक हनगे इटली जर्मनी ते इजराइल दे ਵੱਡੇ ਕੰਪੋਜ਼ਰ ਹਨਗੇ ਇਟਾਲੀਅਨ ਲੂਕਾ ਲੋਂਬਾਰਦੀ 1945 ਦੇ ਜਨਮੇ ਹਨਗੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਕੰਪੋਜ਼ਰ ਹਨਗੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬੜੇ ਕੰਮ ਬੜੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਕੰਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨਸ ਨੇ 180 ਦੇ ਕਰੀਬ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਰਚਨਾਵਾਂ ਰਚੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 4 ਓਪੇਰਾਜ਼ ਹਨਗੇ ਸਿੰਫਨੀਜ਼ ਹਨਗੀਆਂ ਚੈਂਬਰ ਮਿਊਜ਼ਿਕ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਵੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਸੋ ਆਓ ਆਪਾਂ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਹਾਂ Luca Lombardi Nenal. Benvenuto, Luca, to the YaarAnād Virtual Baithak Series. I'm so glad we could meet.
Grazie, buonasera. Hi.
Buonasera.
Nice to meet you.
Come va? Tutto bene?
Tutto bene.
Roma, tu sei in Roma, eh?
No, sono sul lago Albano. On the lake Albano, which belongs to the small city of Marino, but is in front of Castel Gandolfo.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know the Italian singer Albano. I know that Villaggio di Albano is there. So I thought, I was 22 years ago. I was on the tabloids when he had a daughter. They saw this Sikh friend from India has come of Albano, and we were all both together on the papers.
No connection to it. Albano it was an old pre-Roman city called Alba Longa. And they didn't find it, but it's somewhere here, and because of that the lake is called Albano. There is also a city of Albano.
I see. So your work is a wow. I mean, that's amazing. It's really indeed a real pleasure. It's very intimate for me to speak with you today. Your work is it speaks for itself. I've always wondered, as a as a composer, what would it be like? I mean, as a composer from an Indian classical background, we have mostly it is not polyphonic. It's monophonic mostly. At best, your polyphony is having a tanpura, which is tanpuras on 2 notes, and then you're singing, and at best we have a string player who is almost following you as a singer, sort of copying you, and we have a percussion which is nowadays been relegated down to keeping the time, like just a human metronome. The idea, the way the percussion evolved in South Asian music was it used to go along. There was a whole logic where the first part, the asthai, would have a certain logic of accompaniment because it was again text based. So they created the idea of weaving sound with silence, like primordial, the first sounds. What would it be like? The language is very little. And it's saying hello, and then wait, and then oh, I'm okay, and then wait, and then hey, how are you, and then wait, like dha tre kata kata ge dha di ta ke dha di ta ke na. For example, very, and the composition would be going on. And then sequences like this would be played to break monotony, etc. But when the first stanza would come, they would go into the double. The percussion would go double. And there would be logic. So when the percussion, the song would come back to the chorus, they would have ending patterns. So this is how it evolved. Then the third part of the composition, the sanchari as we call it, it came, the third melodic line was, whenever it evolved centuries ago, then came the playing of the multiples of threes. So dha na na ta ta dha trigade ta ta ka da di ke la dha ka da di ke, like that. So multiples of threes would go on. And ending would dha du du like that. And then the fourth part would go complex. It would go the pakki tigan. So song is going on. The same chorus, for example, would be repeated at the same slow tempo, but the percussion would be towering at pakki tigan and multiples, all kinds of rhythmic patterns, like mixed pattern compositions. This is how Indian music evolved. So if I as a composer am thinking of saying, composing a melody or a musical rag based composition, mine would go, for example, if I may, one of this 12 beat slow tempo. Paite pavane bhagat vachale bhai three or four lines, and then
wonderful, beautiful example. Yeah.
And then the stanza would go. In fact, it came to me when I was in my father-in-law's garden in Janola, next to Formia, in 2004. So I was doing an experiment of if these ancient ragas in which no composition has been composed for 200 odd years, can it come alive after all the learning that I had gone through? The stanza came from the fourth. And it goes on. And then the third line came Nath Sakhe Prananath Anath Dade Deen Govid Charan. And then the last one would be Asapuran Dukhe Vedaran Nanak Har Charan Patit Bhavana, and go. It comes back to the chorus. So these are like roughly the 4 parts.
Yeah, and there is a text.
Yes, there's a text of the 5th Guru, which is from the last decade of the 16th century. So I took his works, and the experiment I did was to take a text which I had never heard a composition in. That means I should have never heard it sung in any form. And they should be complex meters. And then there should be ragas which I've dyed. They don't exist. But of course they exist because I head the 5 centuries plus tradition. So of course it's there in part of my learning, but doesn't exist for the rest of the world. I remember a composition or two, but they don't know really the rag, its advent, and so on and so forth. Now, point I'm making is, this is one idea of a composition. And I've sung it, so the string player would just try to follow without rehearsal. Even they are very good players, so they can follow, hear it by ear, have an oral response, and they play. If I were to I compose, for example, percussion. Now, if I were to compose percussion, it could be in slow tempo, could be, let me just recite one medium tempo. Pakki Dugan. So this is a 3-beat cycle, 36 beats, 12 into 3. So this gets played. If somebody's singing, I can play with somebody. But your idea of composition, you've got an orchestra, you've got a symphony, you're writing an opera. How is it? I mean, who are you? How do you do it? When you have to conceive maybe 100 people doing 200 things at the same time. So I'm very curious, and I'm so glad I have you to ask all my silly questions.
Now, Bhai Baldeep, I would be very curious to know more about your tradition, and because I don't know nothing or almost nothing. But now I try to respond to your question. Well, you are referring to your tradition. And I am referring to the European tradition, which you know, of course. So, as a composer, I have many fathers and grandfathers and actually giants on my shoulders who developed this kind of musical logic. And so there are some rules which are inner musical and which you learn, and of course you develop them, because the European culture, as you know, is a dynamic culture. I don't know if it's good or not, but it's different from the gagaku music in Japan, where you you try to behave according to this tradition, and you are not supposed to change it. Yeah. And in European culture, you change it. So there is a big history from the medieval, let us say, 800 centuries ago until today. Also, in brackets, I may say that a genre like the opera, it's 400 years old, so not very old, but enough. You know, the first opera was written in 1600 in Florence. Yes. And so the very first important opera composer was Claudio Monteverdi, and he composed wonderful music, and today we are still listening to this music and admiring it. But the opera which was written in the following centuries, and in 1700, and then 1800, so Donizetti, Bellini, and Verdi, the great Italian composer Giuseppe Verdi, is very different from this first opera. And then in the 20th century, Puccini, and then Alban Berg, and even Karlheinz Stockhausen, who was a teacher of mine.
Yeah, I have to talk to him. Talk to you about him as well later.
Yeah, and so on and so on. So it's like a very big river flowing and changing, but basically being the same, because there are also in opera some rules that you have to respect. I mean, because you write for a big audience, and you have to write a dramatic music, and you have to accord to the psychology of the different characters and so on. But it's not easy to answer correctly to your question, because it's a big question, you know. And you were speaking about a sort of conversation, right? When you gave the example, singing and playing, and I think that also the music I write, it's a sort of statement, so monologue, but also dialogue between the instruments. So sometimes you have a solo instrument who is playing a phrase, a solo oboe, or a solo violin, or a solo flute, or a solo piano, and so on. And sometimes they are speaking and singing together, and according one to the other. So it's a collective product, and an orchestra, I think it's a wonderful instrument itself, belonging of many different instruments, but it's also a wonderful instrument, and the individual players, they are individuals, but they have to work together like a collective. I mean, it's very different, but it's like it's like an airplane, you know. Many people have to work together so that you have a safe flight, you know, from Italy to New Delhi. Yeah, so the collective work is very important. Also, when you write a symphony, or more so an opera, because you have also so many technicians and working in the theater, and then you have the text, and you have the how do you call it, the scenes, you know. So there is something to listen to, but also to look at. Yeah. So, but it's a wonderful work, and I think I'm very glad, I'm very fortunate that I decided that I knew when I was 10 years old, I already knew I wanted to be a composer. I don't know why, but I had this strong desire. And of course, it was hard work, but it's good to do hard work when you want to do it.
Yes.
It's something different if you have to do some hard works, but you don't want to do it. So it's terrible. So I don't complain at all. I'm very fortunate.
Not even a little.
Sorry?
Not even a little.
Not?
Not even a little.
Even a little what?
Complaint.
No. Yes, you know, we all complain that things should be better, and first of all, mostly the world should be better.
Yeah.
But this is the world we have, so we can try to change it, to improve it. And when I was young, I was also very politically committed. You know, I'm still politically interested, but when I was young, I thought we are able, I say not only me, but my friends and people thinking the same, maybe a political party, we can change and improve the world. But
what an idea.
The world changed us, you know. And but again, I think that nowadays we have, on the whole, a better world than some decades ago, or since some centuries ago. You know, you can say what you want. Not in all countries, I must say. There are countries where you can't say what you want. There is still much to do. The people there have to change things, and we have a better health system than when there were some other pandemics. Because pandemics, in all history of mankind, you had pandemics, you know. And today something different, because we are a global, somebody said, a global village, you know, more and more. And so you know in real time what is happening in Brazil or in Italy or in India or wherever. And so we are concerned. And but fortunately, you know, this pandemic how do you say, we had 600,000 casualties.
Yes.
Which is a lot, but in other pandemics you had millions and millions, and you know, So it's a little bit better. It's better. Our world is better. So I would like to stay here still a couple of years, because I got accustomed, you know.
That's nice. Before we go further, what is a musical note? Does a particular note have a meaning for you? Did they have, that is a note, individual or collectively, did they have a meaning for you when you began at age 10? If not, when did they begin to have one? That is, when did they begin to have a meaning?
No, actually, I began composing, so to speak, when I began playing the piano, almost at the same time. So on the day of my 10th birthday, which is December 24, I improvised a piece on the piano in C minor, and it was a waltz, strange enough. Yeah. You say I don't agree to always. You say that the minor is sad and the major is how do you say, the contrary of sad, is happy. Yeah. So my waltz was in C minor, so supposedly a sad waltz, but I didn't think it was sad. It was just in C minor.
So you mean it was not C sad?
No. And so a particular note, I wouldn't say a particular note, but there is a particular interval, you know, and this is the minor third. Tito. Why? I don't know. This note is, this interval is contained in my first name, Luca. Because, you know, according to the German, to the Anglo-Saxon tradition, the letters of the alphabet are also notes, are also the names of notes. So C is do, what we say in Italian do, and A is A, is la. So Luca, da, C-A. Maybe because of that, unconsciously, I used this interval like a call, you know?
Yes.
So it appears in my music from time to time, yeah.
That's your signature in it.
But there is something else I could add. During my life, I was interested in tone roads. Do you say so? Ladders, tone ladders. How do you call it?
Yeah, tone ladder, tanned leather.
Sorry?
Yeah, tanned leather.
Yeah. So I developed eventually. I developed some letters. In Italian, letter is scala, you know. Right. So like a ladder where you climb.
Ladder, yes, I see. Not ladder. Ladder,
yes? Ladder, yeah. And but scala is also the musical ladder.
Yes.
So yeah. So I developed several ladders, musical ladders.
Musical scales.
And eventually, scales.
Yeah, musical scales.
Scale. Musical scale. And eventually, more than 20 years ago, exactly in 97, I developed a scale which became my own scale. And since I am using always, practically always, this scale in my compositions.
I see.
And this is a particular scale. It's not so interesting now because I don't have a copyright on this scale, but it's my personal scale, and it's different from the other ones. Shall I play it?
Yes, it'll be fantastic. We can turn the computer.
You are right. You are right. We have plenty of possibilities.
Yes.
So
we can keep it in a place where I can see the piano and you playing.
Yeah. So I play just this.
No, can you make it down? I cannot see. You can keep it on the table where it was before, and just turn the computer only so that I can see you from far and the piano.
Okay, let me see, because here there is a lot of things on the table. I have to be careful. So,
can you make it a little low, the screen low, so that I can see the computer? But that's okay. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about the objects.
But you can hear it now.
Yes.
Yeah? So I'm playing.
Can you make it a little taller? Can you make it a little taller? The computer, the little headroom. Can you lift the screen?
Lift
the screen and turn to your left, just a bit, and to your left. Yeah. Now let me see. Just move aside. No, it's gone too much high. Little low. The screen low.
Yeah.
This is good.
Low,
good. That's good. Yeah. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
better.
I am starting with C.
Okay.
Of course, I could start with every note.
Yeah.
So you see the scale doesn't end with the octave.
Right.
It's not like the normal scale.
Right.
But it ends with a 9.
Yes.
So with this scale, I can build, so to speak. So let me go back to the table. I can build all kind of horizontal melodies or figures.
Can we keep at the same place where it was before, the computer?
Yeah, let me try. Yeah. It was a little bit more. And but also the vertical aspect, so what we call the harmony.
Can you bring the computer down a little bit?
Yeah. Like this, it's better?
Yeah, a little further away.
Yeah.
Little further away.
Yeah? It's okay, like this?
A little bit more. That's good. That's good.
Okay. So,
thank you for that.
Thank you. So, when I was younger, I did a lot of preparing work concerning the harmony and this and the chords, many chords and permutations and so on. But now, since I since I developed this scale, I am much more free, because of course I can transpose it on all degrees, of course, but I'm free and I can compose more spontaneously, and this scale has some now I should go back to show it some characteristics which are related to my biography.
I see.
By chance, I mean, or I was not aware of it. I discovered it.
I see.
Why? I explain it. Because my parents were Neapolitans. They were born in Napoli, in Naples. And you know that the popular music of Naples is influenced by Spanish and Arabic music. So there is a touch of Orient in this music, you know.
Yes.
And my mother, she was a Jew. Supposedly, her family came to Rome 2,000 years ago, first to Rome, and then the family later in the 19th century went to Naples. Yeah, so and since now more than 10 years, I spent much time in Israel, in Tel Aviv, as you mentioned before, and the music, the Jewish music, and the music of the Middle East has also this Oriental touch, this Oriental flavor. And so with this scale, because of the intervals in this scale, I can, if I want, I can build somehow Oriental sounding or Middle Oriental sounding figures, music. I can, but I must not, because the scale is very open to different to a different use.
Interesting, very interesting. So the videos that you have chosen to share with us, the audio scales from your new YouTube channel, which I will share with the friends and everybody else. I'll share the links also in the comments later. The two compositions that we've chosen, is anyone using your particular scale, or which one?
All compositions.
Okay, both of them. The two examples you've chosen.
Are you speaking because I sent you a few compositions? If you are speaking of Terra and Mare, yes. Yeah.
I see.
If you are speaking of the flute concerto, also yes, but since it's dedicated to a particular flutist, Emmanuel Pahud, I also used the notes, so to speak, contained in his name, and mostly the E of Emmanuel. E is the note E, yeah. So there is a pole of E. Speaking of the little piece dedicated to Ennio Morricone for his 19th birthday, it was 1.5 years ago. Now he passed away. You know Morricone, the famous film? It's a very famous film composer.
I see.
You know, in Italy and all over the world, I must say, he's very famous for his film music. It's not my world, but there are different worlds, of course. So I when he turned 19.
Oh, the one who passed away just now.
Yeah, he passed away a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. The one, yes, from who did a lot of work in Hollywood as well. Yes.
Yeah, in Hollywood, he got an Oscar.
I knew his work. Yes, I know his work.
Yeah. Okay. So also in this case, I use the notes contained in his name, but there are not many notes in his name, so I use also other things. And for Zubin Mehta, again, since it's a little, the famous Indian-born conductor Zubin Mehta, I wrote a couple of years ago a piece for his birthday, and trying to use the notes contained in his name.
I see.
And these are B, Zubin, and E again of Mehta, and H also in German. It's B in German according to Mehta, and A of course, which is A also. Yeah, but in except from this homage to some friends or colleagues or people, I always use my scale.
I see. So the ones that I have queued up are one by Luca Ennio in 2018 per piccola orchestra Roma Sinfonietta.
Yeah, Ennio Morricone, the film composer.
Yes.
Right.
And shall we play that first?
If you want, yes. Why not?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Just a second. Let's prepare that. Safari. Let me arrange that for a second. And when did you write me? By the time I'm just arranging that, when did you write this one? It was in the time when it was played?
Yeah, I wrote it. Yeah, I wrote it in 2018. And it was played in a concert dedicated to Morricone, to Ennio Morricone. Ennio is his first name, so I called it Ennio. And you will hear that the musicians, at a certain point, they are also singing Ennio, Ennio, and so.
I see.
And he was there, and was very, very content, very happy about the concert and about the piece. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I'm in fact showing your manuscript of Ennio at this moment.
Okay.
And this is all done in hand, is it? You wrote this in hand? When you write,
Yeah, it's in hand, but it was also, I sent you the handwriting, but it was copied by the publisher, so there is also a copied copy.
Right. And let me get you in here, and we'll show the show your film. So friends, this is his new video channel, and I will share it with you guys later, the link as well of his, but you can also search him. Let me just make it bigger. Here we go. And I need to get myself out of here. How do I do that? Okay, here we go.
So again, it's a little homage, a little piece, a birthday piece, and of course I don't quote his music, his film music, but at a certain point.
But that was fantastic. It was very, very silent, very slow. And that was what I was talking about, in the sense that the idea of, the idea of the note. And then I'm sort of drawn by the, I wanted to ask you this question, is about silence. And you, but before I go there, the meaning, it's, you've sort of added a new thing. I never expected, I didn't know that you had created a scale. So I have like a million things to ask you with regards to the scale, because a part of the Baithak series, I have been looking at the idea of the scale, especially with the Southern Indian, one of the Southern Indian traditions, what is called Carnatic music. They have, in the last centuries, they have come up with the 72 scales, Mēlā ragas, and Jacques Charpentier did a lot of work on them. They created, he was with Alain Denelou, they were all doing the rounds here. And I'm sort of covering with some of the top scholars and singers from South India, covering them. I'm in conversation with Professor T. Satyavati and Leela Ram Gopal and several elders from the South. I, for example, was looking at the scale of one of the ragas, which uses both the thirds, both the fourths, and both the sevenths. So technically it will be re ga re sa ma ga ma pa ma pa da ni da ma pa ni sa ni da pa ma ga ma ga re sa ma ga ma da ma pa ni sa. It goes like that. So I was wondering that in the North India, they have somehow reduced down to the idea of 10 scales in the last 110, 15 years. And they say that these are 10 basic scales, but then now everybody thinks there are only 10 scales. So it's become sort of reducing, when at one time the universe is expanding. Suddenly they put barriers. No, the universe must only be this much. They don't want to flow. They don't want to flutter their wings and explore more territory. So something strange was happening in South Asia at the end of the 19th century and the early 20th century. And I'm really like a ruthless critic of all the nonsensical, with no apologies to the people concerned at the time, when they were underestimating the idea of, human capacity, that when we have had such grand elders and musicians, they were reducing down to that. But anyway, initially we had 7 scales in North, 7 basic ideas, basically, that a scale could be only one note. So this is called archic. They've forgotten them now. 2-note scales, 3-note scales, the Gathic, then the Sabrantar Jati. Samaha Jati is 3 and Sabrantar Jati is 4 notes. And then we have 5, 6 and 7. And then of course you can have multiple variants, in the sense if you have the 4 notes, you can have both, the flat and the sharp incarnations and so on and so forth. So in 2006 and in 2007 early, I think it was 6th of January 2007 in Napoli, at about 3 o'clock, I said, you know what, I have to start writing. So I thought I have to check which scale would this Rag Tukhari belong to. So I started writing. By the time I reached Milan, a few days later, I had written over 700 scales. In the end, I wrote 1439 scales. It's still not published, but it is mentioned and so on and so forth. So I've done like work on scales, and I found this was 742 or something number scale in my scale count. I said, oh great, I found Tukhari. This is where it belongs. So I called it the Gandhari Madhumi Nekhadi Male. So basically the scale which is both the Gandhars, both the Madhyams and both the Nikha, both the 3rd, 4th and the 7th. I'm just giving it a technical name so far. So this, for example, has fascinated me, that the way your idea of the scale is to go beyond the 7 notes, and you have a scale which is there. It's amazing. I'm like, I'm excited, right? And I actually want to fly straight where you are in Lago di Albano. We need to talk long hours, and I'm really looking forward to our conversations in the near future. But the idea of this note, I want to go a little further. I still want to explore and see if I can coax your reflection out. The meaning, what does a note mean to you? When you're a weaver, right? You weave with the notes. Why do you choose a note? Yes, you told me about Luca has that A and C is there, and has a certain name, Zubin Mehta, and there's a B. If my name is Baldeep, you would say with B and A and E, like that. Fair enough. But beyond that, when
you're Bhai and then Baldeep
That sounds exactly like me.
Yeah.
But then you are beyond the names. When you're looking at the notes to the level, now it makes my job little, or my question, or my situation little calmer. Because the fact that you're not trapped within the idea of an X scale or Y scale, that you have fluttered your wings and you've had the courage to explore something to the level of even a scale that you would want to write or compose, and you've been doing that now. So tell me, what is a note for you, and what do the notes become when from one you use the other? Why do you choose a note to sit along another? Then if you jump, why do you jump a note? If you make a crooked pattern, why? Take me to the notes, to your notes, how you see a note, how you touch a note, why you touch a note, and when do you touch it?
Well, you know, a big part of the psychology of notes, of the meaning of notes, is cultural, of course, because it's everything, almost everything is cultural. I mean, it changes with time, with history. But so you know, in Western music we have the dissonance and the consonance, but what once was considered dissonance today, and dissonance is something a little bit disturbing, you know. You have then to have after a dissonance a consonance, but what was considered a dissonance nowadays is not so much disturbing very often. But you know that the minor second, the minor second. So in Bhai, BH, which would be in a German, how do you call it, system, it would be actually B flat and B.
I see.
B flat, B. A minor second was considered, or is still considered, a dissonance, you know. So once I think that notes, a scale, and intervals are living, how do you say, are living beings, And once I was dreaming that I was sleeping on a minor second,
I see.
You know, and this was not comfortable, you know. So I woke up and it was not comfortable. So they have a life themselves, the notes, you know. So why I choose one interval or one note or not another, it's difficult to say. It has to do with many different things. But of course, it's like dealing with organism, with an organism, and you have to put life in this organism, So the composer is a creator, you know, and he is able to give life to something which otherwise it's only, let us say, neutral or not living and not alive,
Right. And what about silence? How do you play with it? I mean, do you carve space for silence, or is it that it already exists where the melody isn't?
Silence is very important for my music because it gives sense to the music itself. I mean, it's not only a rest, it's not only a pause, it's it gives meaning to what to what was before and to what is going to follow. So silence is very important, and I don't like the music which doesn't stop. Therefore, it might be how do you say? It might be a negative side of mine. I don't know now the English word. But maybe therefore generally I don't like jazz. Because in jazz generally, of course, when I say generally, it is a generalization, of course, and there are exceptions, but jazz, you have a very ongoing movement, and no rest and so. And so I think in music, pauses are very important. And this is more so since the 20th century. So in what we call modern music and also in contemporary music. Of course, it's not the case in the so-called North American minimalism, where you have a repetition, a continuous repetition. Of course, there is no silence. But there are also some composers, some old masters, old composers, who worked very much with silence, like I am thinking of Anton Webern. Anton Webern, an Austrian composer who used only a few notes and between them silence. Yeah. So I think that silence, how can I put it? Of course, there is also a piece which is belonging, not belonging. It's consisting only of silence. This is too much, of course. But you know this piece by John Cage. It's called 4 minutes and 33 seconds, and it's for piano, but in 3 movements, and before and after one movement, the pianist has to close the, how do you call it, the cover, yeah? So and of course when it was performed for the very first time, I think it was in the 60s or even in the 50s, I don't remember now, people were shocked and they thought it would be a provocation, So they, after a while, since nothing was happening, they began laughing or speaking or saying something, and so there was no silence, of course. But this was what the composer John Cage intended to do, that he wanted to show that there is no silence, because if we are now silent, suddenly we hear some maybe very little noises, and also I hear a noise of the computer, maybe of the microphone, I don't know. And this is also very interesting. When I was back in 1970 or 69, I was attending a course in Cologne in Germany where Stockhausen also was, but it was not a course by Stockhausen, it was by Kagel, Maurizio Kagel, also composer, and this special seminar was led by a composer who became a very close friend of mine, Frederick Rzewski. Don't know if you heard the name. He's an American-born composer of Polish origin, and the pianist and the composer. And the whole class, we were, I don't remember, maybe we were 10 people, something like this. We went with some very good, with a very good equipment, Nagra, you know, we went to the public library of Cologne, where you are supposed to be silent. And we recorded what was going on. And in this silent atmosphere, you heard everything. You know, when somebody was turning a page, this was with this very good recording equipment with back in '69, but it was very, 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 very sensitive, this microphone. So you recorded, or somebody was, and this was like a thunder, you know. And so we got a feeling to listen to what is going on. Also, some little noises have life inside. Yeah.
I feel that the idea of silence is, and as much as it can exist in a song, is the human tendency or capacity to transform. For example, if I'm in an air-conditioned space, I'm like, my body is cool, and I go out, my body will take a few seconds to adapt to the new circumstance. And if I come from out to inside, it will take a few seconds before it settles down. But then when it comes to the eyes, there is light, and I shut the light off. Yes, there would be tables and there would be computers that wouldn't care whether the light is on or off, but my eyes would care. They would take time to transform, and it'll open up wide, and whatever contraction, expansion will happen of the iris, and then trying to see in the dark. And if you suddenly put the light when you're adapted to the dark, and then your eyes are it'll take, those seconds to really calm down, and so on and so forth. So I think when we talk of silence in music, it has to be a calculation of how much, let's say if I'm creating a music, if I'm creating sound, let's say I'm singing, or if I just, recite something very rare, if it goes, so it's going 32 times the beat, and then it goes negative as many. So there are ideas like that. This is a very, very rare. I don't think anybody else has this repertoire, and I'm being the head of the older school of percussion as well of South Asia. I have access to some rare aspects, and I've been recovering things from the ruins. Or if I'm singing, let's say, I regard Solagi di Solagi Singar Ke Anjana Bajaya Solagi di Solagi Singar. The idea of this is an ancient composition, centuries old, said to be a composition of the 5th Guru, late 16th century. Now, the way it ends, we speak of silence within the song. Whether the world is silent is not. My heart is still beating. My body is murmuring or humming. That is going to happen. But the idea of how in the melodic space, how do you bring silence? Or if I may ask you in another way, but it is not a repeat of my question, but is silence your canvas, or is sound your canvas in which you place silence?
Say again the last thing. Is silence what?
Your canvas, yes? Like a painter.
Canvas.
Is your music sheet empty, blank music sheet? Is it? Do you begin from silence? Imagine silence, and you place the first note, like the first ripple in the water, or you have a melody when it comes, and then silence slowly comes in. That's the end of one melodic line, and so on and so forth. How does silence enter your musical work?
It depends. It's not always the same. Thanks God. I'm glad, because composing is for me an adventure, exploring. How do you say? Discovering things. So I don't have a system, that I always use, but it depends from the piece I'm going to do. The scale is a sort of frame, but a very open frame. Also, by the way, it's an open scale because it ends with a 9 and not with an octave, and so it gives some more freedom. But coming back to your question, I didn't think, unfortunately, to send you a piece which I wrote for Roberto Proceda, who wrote us together. I didn't think of that. It's called Mendelssohn im Jüdischen Museum Berlin. This means Mendelssohn, the composer Mendelssohn, in the Jewish Museum of Berlin.
I found it online. Do you want me to play it?
Yeah. And this piece begins with a single note. Da.
I see.
Yeah. So and so on. So it's. I like also to. And then there are other things. There are also some Mendelssohn quotations, and so it's like Mendelssohn coming back to life after 200 years, and being in Berlin and seeing there is a Jewish museum. He was of Jewish origin, as you know, and so he goes in and he learns what's happened in all this time, Okay. But I like to work with little material and to develop from little material. But of course, in the Western music history, there are huge examples of this, and I think of Beethoven in his Fifth Symphony, where and he develops a whole movement at least, but also a whole symphony only from these two notes, ta 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 ta, and so I think it's difficult, but it's demanding, but it's more interesting to how can I say, to limit the material, because you have all possibilities, you have all notes you heard and you hear, and all pieces you heard in your life, and now it's difficult also, it's confusing, it's chaotic. But I think if you limit the material and you build your own cage, you say, I do want to work only, I establish my material, I build my own cage. Of course, I can go out of this cage, and then you are more free. You are free, more free than when you have all possibilities and you don't know with what to begin and with what to continue and what to end. So this is, so to speak, my philosophy, to limit the field, but to develop out. There is another piece of mine which I like very much, although I wrote it 40 years ago. It's called Clavier Duo. It means piano duet. It's also on YouTube, and in 3 movements. And I developed the first movement, for instance, only from 5 notes and one chord, which is also built with 5 notes. But with all kind of, of working, of composing, of how do you call it, of permutations, and also with fantasy, with musical fantasy, because the musical fantasy is something else than the general fantasy. The general fantasy is you can imagine to fly or I don't know what, or to swim now in the lake. I see from my. May I show you the lake? Sure. Yeah. Wait. Can you see it?
Yes. Lower. Can you make it lower? Little lower.
Lower. Yeah. Like this?
Yes, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Wow, that's beautiful.
On the other side of the lake, you see the little town of Castel Gandolfo.
I see.
And here's our garden.
It's beautiful.
And so on. And here's my working table, where I have to fill a lot of pages, these big pages. Yeah. But what I wanted to say, the fantasies, I could imagine to swim under the water from one side of the lake to the other one. But the musical fantasy is something different. It's only musical. It's another logic, And you have this interval, these notes, and you have to do something which makes sense. First of all, it makes sense for you, for myself, and I hope that it makes sense also for you and for other people.
Yes. Can you move the computer to where it was before?
Yeah. Wait. So
let me play, meantime, Roberto Proceda's, the one that you wrote in 2014. Shall we do that?
Yeah, sure,
yeah,
why not?
The one with the silence, the one begins with one note.
But I don't know if it is on.
It is Mendelssohn, I am Judischen Museum Berlin.
Yeah.
I've got it queued up.
Ah, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. You agree?
This was very powerful, Luca. I was, I don't know, I was seeing persecution. I was seeing I was seeing the silence of the graves, as if the pain which is inflicted and inflicted and inflicted and inflicted on the same spot. It's like the drop which falls on the same spot, tick tick, and it's on the forehead, and even just a teardrop as if becomes painful. Then I saw in the end some repetitions, and I see some hope and joy. Tell me more. I'm very intrigued by this piece. Tell me more about this piece that you wrote for Roberto.
Yeah, when I'm very glad that you heard this out of the piece. On the other side, if I say something about the music, the risk is to simplify, because there are reflections about the history, of course, about the history of Germany regarding their relationship to the Jews, but it is not like a film or a program. There are reflections, and it's a piece of music, so the listener should have freedom to make association, but also of course, because if you know the titles are important in music, because it gives a direction, to what to pay attention. But of course you also could listen to it without knowing the title. So it's difficult to say it in words, because if I could say it in words, I wouldn't write the music, Right. So of course it has to do with Mendelssohn, with the Jewish tradition, with Germany, also with this wonderful place, this Jewish museum. I don't know whether you saw it, you know it.
Not in Germany.
It's a very no in Berlin, yeah. It's a very interesting building. Also, it's a new building by an American architect called Daniel Liebeskind, and it's very interesting. So the context is important.
I've seen Poznan and the sites there in Poznan in Poland. I've seen those very, very closely, and I've spent a long time there. Taking my time, going from room to room. But next time I'll make it a point to visit the.
Yeah, when we are in Berlin, you should definitely go there. It's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, the building is it's very a creative building. It's not oppressive. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
And there is one piece that you have shared as the non-requiescat. I'm showing the manuscript now to our friends. Tell me about this. This is you wrote in 2007, is it? No,
in
1973. That's
73.
I see. That's 40.
47 years ago.
47 years ago. Wow, almost 50.
No. I was at that time. I was 27. So I mean, I was young, but not a child. and it's a homage, like very different, but like the piece for Ennio Morricone. Eisler himself, I don't know, maybe I will say a few words about Eisler because probably many people don't know him. He was a pupil of Arnold Schoenberg, a very gifted pupil, but he was interested in changing the world by musical means. So he became in the 20s in Berlin. We were speaking about Berlin, and he was Austrian born, but he lived in Berlin, and he joined the leftish party, the Communist Party, you know. And he was a friend and collaborator of Bertolt Brecht, who was a very important and very good writer and poet. And he wanted to change the world to make it better, but it's difficult. Sometimes people try to make the world better and it becomes worse. Yeah. That's the problem, you know. Like the revolution in Russia, and then it doesn't function, or like the socialist countries in Germany itself or in East Europe, and it doesn't function and so on. But this is another story. Also, it's also our story, you know, and so he tried to do another music, a more simple music for the working people, for the masses, you know, and not the music he had learned while being a student of Arnold Schoenberg, who was a very important, very great composer, and also the inventor of the so-called dodecaphonic music, you know, which is more intellectual to some extent. And so, okay, and I discovered this, for myself, this composer at the end of the 60s, you know, and wanted to do the same what he was doing. So I also began conducting a choir, a workers' choir in Cologne. But in this case, the piece I wrote in 73 is a piece of contemporary music. It's not this kind of simple music, because I knew I wanted to put together the contemporary music, the modern music, and the interest for the political leftish political movement, and it was not easy. I didn't know how to do it, but and so I wrote a piece where it's a short piece, less than 6 minutes.
Yes.
But at some point there is a quotation of a very famous song by Eisler. Solidaritätslied, the song of solidarity. Vorwärts und nicht vergessen, worin deine Stärke besteht. Beim Essen und beim Tam-Tam, Tim-Tam, die Solidarität. This is the song, you know, I quote it, and this is like something very different from what is before and also what it follows. It's a sort of island, and it's a break, like something different. And I wanted to show that the things are still divided. There is a cultural music, the so-called classical serious music, and there are the songs, the workers' song, and they are still separated, and we should bring them together. But how? This is a big question mark.
Let's listen to that then. That was quite something. That was 40 years ago.
Yeah. But time is something strange.
Would you write this again if you were to do this now? Are there things that you would want to do differently when you revisit it, or you're happy with what you did then?
No, I am happy with what I did, and generally I don't rewrite a piece. I try to write something else.
I see.
So, yeah.
I see. And how would you look at, tell us about this piece in a way. I mean, I see a lot of movement, a lot of directions. If I'm sitting in the center, I see very many planes coming from all the directions, to take the aerial, analogy.
In this piece,
yeah.
Well, actually, there was an idea, the starting idea, except the very beginning. The very beginning is also a long note, like very different. Now I notice, like in the Mendelssohn piece, in the piano piece, it begins with something, a long note. Also here, and then it starts, yeah. Because I had the idea that Eisler, to whom the piece is dedicated, stated once that he thought of himself like somebody running to bring an important news, like a messenger. And he was running. And this was a starting idea of this trumpet. For instance, there is a trumpet who is playing, which is playing a lot of notes, very difficult. And I remember I brought it at that time. I was in Berlin when I wrote it.
Can you move the computer away? Just move away. More.
Yeah. Okay.
And little down.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I was, at that time, I was in Berlin, and I was working on my doctoral thesis on Eisler himself. I was working in the archive. By the way, in this same archive, now there is my archive, Yeah, it's the archive of the Academy of Arts in Berlin, Akademie der Künste. It's a very great honor for me that my stuff is there. In any case, and at the same time, I was studying with Paul Dessau, who was also an important composer and also a friend and collaborator of Bertolt Brecht. And I brought this piece while I was writing it. I brought it to him, yeah. And so he looked at it and saw this trumpet passage, and he said to me, "Don't you think that it's very difficult for a trumpet player? Why don't you give it to two trumpet players? Why don't you divide it to them?" And I answered, "No, I want just to have this gesture of being out of breath, and that he runs and runs." And by the way, there is a film by Godard. The French title is "À bout de souffle," out of breath, And I was also thinking of this title. So I left it like it is, yeah. and he accepted it. I hope. I think. But this is also the thing of relationship between student and the professor. It should be a dialogue.
Yes.
You can't think that the professor is always right and the student is always wrong. Sometimes, In any case, it was difficult, but for me it was not important that every note is precise and exact. The character was important to be out of breath. Yeah, and then as I mentioned before, there is this quotation of the song. It's like another world. Tim tum ta tim ta tim tum. Tim tum tum ta tim, and so divided, and then there is a sort of ending, a sort of the last part. So, and the title is also strange, the title, because it's Latin, and generally you say when Eisler was dead, of course, because he died back in 1962. I wrote the piece more than 10 years later. Yeah. And you say requiescat in pace. When somebody is dead, you say he may rest in peace. Yeah, rest in peace. And in Latin, requiescat in pace, or pace, the Italian pronunciation. And I wrote non requiescat. He may not rest, which is very strange. But I meant his example should be lively. Yeah, non requiescat. He may not rest because we need his example. So this is
beautiful.
The idea. Yeah.
And the idea, like I'm a Sikh. I was in a television debate earlier, and there were not just one, but 4 or 5 idiots on the one side of the political debate, and they were, when they did not have answers to my simple question. Even today, I got called a separatist. I called a Khalistani. It'll show on Sunday, and it made me laugh, and I told them that they were just stupid people. People ask me, why do I come to such a show? I said, sometimes I like to see idiots, so I come. So,
from which country? From India?
From India, yeah. They were talking of nationalism. I said, but factionalism is not nationalism. Fragmenting a country and a society is not nationalism. Having biases towards one religious ideology or political ideology is not nationalism. I'll tell you what nationalism is. Actually, it means something else, not how people take. Anyway, point I'm making is, then they called me a separatist, as if someone who's trying to break India into multiple pieces. So the idea of trauma, that I, as a Gursikh, then another joker from within the same pack of idiots said that I'm not even a Sikh, that I don't even know what Sikhi is, etc., etc. It went on and on. But they don't understand, right? They're idiots. But the idea of trauma, the idea of persecution, my bloodline has lived through, from Gurū Nānak's time, the founder of the Gursikh faith 550 years ago. We're celebrating his 550th birth anniversary. This series is dedicated to him. And in our prayer that is read every day, we reminisce the time when our mothers, all men had been lost. Their children at one time were thrown up as game and shot with arrows, and they were dismembered and garlands made, and the mothers were made to wear them. And the mothers prayed that 4 times of the day, 4 parts of the day was spent in your prayer, and the 4 parts of the night, may they be spent in your remembrance, O Creator. So we remember those histories and so on and so forth. So, you mentioned of Berlin. I've seen the Poznan Czeslaw Bala Singh, who's a pianist from Poland, who's a half Sikh. He took me. It was very, for me, I could reminisce. I knew those pains as my own, right?
Yeah.
And how do you call yourself, in the sense that, is there times when music is pouring out of you, because lifetimes are too short. We're talking of centuries of persecution. One life, one pen, one tongue, one imagination. To say the whole story is not enough. If we count the millions who have perished in trying to sustain, in fighting for peace even, and harmony, and even acceptance of diversity. So one person is not enough even to write the tale of trauma, even to depict musically even, literally even. Then if you were to look at healing, how do you heal? How do you reconcile? How do you still see a descendant of a persecutor with compassion? Because you know, and we know that they're not to blame, that someone from them earlier, not this person who stands in front, who himself or herself may be a critic of his or her grandfather or great-grandfather or great-great-great-grandmother and father, etc. So healing is the other aspect. Then there is hope. How do we say, all right, I have the history, I have reconciliation and healing, but then how do I imagine a future? And then imagining, to the fourth element, is how do I build a future which has space for everyone? And I see that you are a teller of stories. You are storytelling, but you are also thinking. You're thinking through music. You are a thinker. Tell me about that. These kind of noises from responding to persecution, being the healer, being the nurse, being the doctor, being the forgiver, then fighting with that one who says, no, I cannot forgive, because that must be counted, that must be remembered. I don't want mistakes like this to be made. So there's important to map that persecution, that tragedy, so that people know that this is not how we must live. How do you deal with all these voices within you?
Well, these are very heavy points, very heavy questions. I think sometimes that mankind, well, let me put it another way. Men are wonderful and terrible. They can be really terrible, but they can be also wonderful. And sometimes I have the feeling, if we were still in the prehistory of mankind, because we are very new on this earth. I think 100,000, 200,000 years. It's nothing compared to the life of beings, 50 millions, or of other beings, and the life of the earth itself and of the universe. So we think we are the center of our little planet, but we aren't, because there are other beings, living beings here, which were before us and probably will be after us. So I say we are in the prehistory of mankind, but who knows how long the history of mankind with lust, because you see how mankind behaves in a very stupid way. You said that you were talking with idiots, but we have idiots as politicians and as head of nations, and so we don't know what we are. It's very risky. Our history is very risky. Now, but at the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about the fact that life is today better than centuries ago.
You mean future is risky? Did you mean future is risky? Did you mean to say future?
It's risky.
Future. You said history. You said future. Okay. Yes.
Future. Okay. Yeah. But still, also we had in the last century we had some of the most tragic crimes of the history of mankind. Still, we are in a better situation than centuries ago. We spoke about that at the beginning of our conversation. But also individually, we can develop. So I have the feeling that I myself developed, in my attitude towards life, toward the world. For instance, I became only probably less than 10 years ago, I became a vegetarian, I was not a vegetarian before. And now I am a vegetarian, and I'm very happy about that, because I have now respect for every form of life, and I think that the other animals, I say the other animals because we are ourselves animals, have also, most of them have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and genital organs and everything, and probably also the psychology is similar, and they feel pain and they are happy, and so how can we think that they are not important and that we are the king of the creation? It's stupid. It's idiotic. This. So I am realistic, but I am also optimistic, and I think to go further, to continue living and working, you have to be optimistic. You have to have hope in the future, and there are wonderful persons. And I am not only speaking of the great artists, but of normal persons you meet on the street, or you get in touch with, and so this gives hope. But coming back to the music, okay, the music is my way to react to reality, and also to give a statement. I don't want, the contemporary classical music sometimes, very often actually, is a sort of little world where people take themselves very seriously, and there are festivals only for this kind of music. So it's a sort of how you say inside. No, I don't find the real term. So it's and I think music should be a testimonial, do you say so?
Yes.
Of your position toward the world. Nowadays, we lost a lot of space. We lost a lot of space because the music became very intellectual, very complicated, and also the music of Beethoven was not easy. Of course, you had to get in it. For the people at that time, it was sometimes very difficult, very shocking. But you know, he was interested in mankind, in the world, in the fact that in solidarity. And I am not speaking only of his Ninth Symphony with not only that, but also in this, there is this poem by Schiller that all men become brothers, and so, which is still a hope, still an illusion, but still a how do you say, still a task, you know, still yeah. But I'm speaking also of many other compositions of his, also of his opera, Fidelio. He wrote one opera, but a very, very beautiful one called Fidelio. It's about freedom, about generosity, you know, and this is important. And nowadays, the composers are only speaking of technical things, and how to compose, and if it is not modern enough, so it's not good, you know, and all this kind of discussions which are really idiotic. So this is what I think.
I see. And is music reactionary and also revolutionary? Are there two different kinds?
Yeah, I can, but you have to be very open-minded. You can't see it like sometimes, you know, also great musicians like, let me name Pierre Boulez, who was also a very good conductor and a composer, but he was very, how do you say, very sectarian? Do you say sectarian?
Yes, no. Sectarian, yeah.
Sectarian, yeah. So what was not in his, you know, what didn't belong to his view, to his musical philosophy, it had no right to exist, yeah. This is, I think it's terrible. And there was a period in contemporary music, I'm speaking of from the 50s on, maybe some of our listeners heard the name of Darmstadt, the city of Darmstadt, where there were some famous courses for new music. So from the 50s until, let us say, the 80s, and alas, also still sometimes today, there are very narrow-minded people who, for them, only one aesthetic is valuable, and whatever is out of this aesthetic doesn't. I think you have to be open-minded because there are many different musical worlds, and we should try to know these different worlds and to get in them. Yeah. So now I see out of the window there are people flying. You know this? How do you call it?
The hang glider. Yeah, the kite flying. Yeah. That's nice. And
I would like to do it. I am too old to start this. Yeah.
I'm an ex-pilot, so I can understand your idea to fly. So, what about what inspired your operas? And I know that you wrote 4. Did they just came or was it like, how did they develop?
Sorry, the question, what the last one I didn't understand.
Did they just happen, or were they like consciously developed, and how did they come about?
Well, so now I'm working on my 5th opera.
I see.
And it's almost done. But I discovered, sometimes I discover after doing something what I really did and why I did it. So when I was 40, 45, something like this, I was no more young, and I had the feeling I have to write an opera. I didn't know why, but I had the desire to write an opera. So I got in touch with Edoardo Sanguinetti, who was a very important Italian writer and poet, and told him if he would have a text or an idea, I would like to write an opera. And he said, I just wrote a particular Faust, Faust, a particular translation, adaptation of the Faust. Do you say Faust in English?
Yeah,
Faust in German, Faust in English.
Go with the original. Yeah.
By Goethe, by the great German poet, writer Goethe. He did a particular, peculiar, very interesting, very brilliant translation of it. I won't go now into details, but it's several levels of spoken language and more let us say academic language and so. And he sent it to me, and I thought it's fantastic, because I attended the German school for some strange reasons in Rome. So I grew up with German culture. And I remember as a child, we studied Faust. I say Faust, it's better.
Yes, better. Go with the original, yes.
Yeah. We studied it at school, at the German school, and I discovered my old book with some musical notes, So as a child, I also thought maybe, but I forgot it completely. And then I got this Italian Faust, because Sanguinetti did an Italian version of it, of course. And I thought this is exactly what I need. Not only because it has to do with German culture, but also because Faust, I interpreted him like an intellectual. This was at the mid of the 80s, yeah? There was, how do you say it, a disillusion of the politics, and many people, and also we didn't know where to go, what to do, but I didn't want to go in a sort of privateness, I also wanted to interact with reality, with the Italian reality, but with the international political reality. And I thought Faust, he was an intellectual who wanted to understand who are we, where are we coming from, what what is the earth, the world, what is inside it, what is keeping all together. It becomes more and more difficult for me to speak in English now, but never mind. And you know, he did a pact with the devil to discover this. So he did a pact, and what was the result? He was an old philosopher, let us say an old scholar. Now he became, after the pact, he became a young man. And so he met a young girl, a young woman. Actually, at that time, at the time of Goethe, girls were mature earlier than later. So she was 14. It was Greta, yeah. And then there is all the story. But at the end, then the devil wanted his prize, you know. But this is now. I don't want to tell the story. In our version, it's open. It's not clear how it ends. Maybe it ends good also. And so I wrote this opera, and I started writing it without having a commission, you know, because I was so enthusiastic. I went to the piano. From that time, I got back to compose at the piano as often as I can. Not always you can do it. Sometimes you have to do it at the table. But and then after I was already working on the opera, I got a letter from an opera house. They didn't know that I was working it. They asked me if I would like to write an opera for them.
I see.
I answered, yes, of course. I am already writing an opera, Faust. And then the director of the opera, he wanted to meet me in Milano. He was a German but living in Basel in Switzerland.
I see.
And okay, why? Because he wanted to convince me how important it is to write an opera for Basel. But I was convinced. I was, you know, and so this is the story of my first opera. And then there is a story for the second and for the third one and for the fourth one and also for the fifth one. The fifth one, again...
Can you move the computer further away? Yeah. It's getting touch. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Further away, please. Yeah.
Yeah, further away.
Yeah, and little low.
Like this?
Little low. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. 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 So I think that writing operas is it's a lot of work, you know, because you may work years on an opera. This became an opera of 2.5 hours music, so with one intermission, 3 hours spectacle. Yeah? And so a lot of work, but it's fantastic because you have all these things coming together. The text, a story, you can tell a story, and a story which might interest normal people, yeah? I mean, what I call normal, and of course, people interested in opera, in music, you know, in literature, in culture, but not for some specialists, you know, not only for some specialists. And so I think also we are coming back now to the beginning of our conversation where I mentioned that the history of opera is 400 years old, and there are a lot of changements, but basically it is still a very actual form, genre. Do you say genre?
Yes, genre. Yes.
Yeah, because of course now we have the movie, we have films, we have the web, all kind of other things, but and the audience of an opera is not so big, and then we have this heavy, beautiful but very heavy tradition, and the majority of people want to hear Verdi and Puccini. I understand them, but we have to go further, you know.
Yeah.
And but also in future, of course, it is a very expensive genre, because the theater needs a lot of money, you know, to produce an opera. It's very expensive. So I don't know. I mean, there is money, but for other things, you know, for soccer, for football, soccer, in America, baseball, or hockey, you know, how do they call it? Yeah, for other.
There's money for corruption too. There's a lot of money for corruption.
For corruption also, a lot of money, yeah. And but so it's also a thing of decision for what using the money. You know, if you want to use it for culture, you are allowed to do it. You know, but. In any case, but I think it has a future. The opera has a future because people are interested in stories, in stories which affects our lives, which are connected to our lives.
Yeah. And what about I had written a question about that every composer has a language of one's own, etc., etc. And you've already mentioned the scale, how you've developed your own scale, that you prefer somehow music and your sort of creative juices flow in that basin. But is there still a language that you've developed in the way you story tell? Or is there a language which existed that you follow or that inspired you? How is it?
When I was young, when I was a student, I tried to listen to as much music as possible, so to see what it. Then you have to develop your own path, you know. And but I was not, I never was interested in creating a personal style, you know. I know there are some colleagues who use a system or some patterns or some characteristics, so they use more or less the same patterns. I am not interested in it because, as I said before, I think that composing is an adventure, and so sometimes you start a piece, but you don't know how it becomes. And if you have a strict system, there is no surprise for yourself. But so I tried not to repeat, as I already said, not to repeat the same things. Of course, I am also myself. Also, if Faust said that he has two souls in his breast, you say, zwei Seelen in meiner Brust, two souls in, said Faust. I have even more, but this is another. So I tried not to repeat myself and did different things. Also, if you listen to Non Requiescat or to Mendelssohn or to what we heard today, they are very
interesting,
different. But I see that people who listen to my music how do you say, they recognize the same composer. So for me, this is I'm glad about that, because I am not interested in being recognized, you know. I'm interested in expressing what I want to do in this very moment.
I see. And in terms of language, when I was talking about reactionary and revolutionary, for me, both kinds of music have a very unique bondage or handicap. When it's reactionary, it is seeped in history, in the occurrences that have already occurred, whereas revolutionary is future, right? It's for a future, and there's no history to bank upon. It's to do with the dreams, how I want to be. Very little of how I don't want to be, but it's more about how I want to be. So those could be how they impact the language as such. For me, past is something that has been, and it comes with a massive, sort of whirlpool of emotions, as I counted earlier, traumas and the harvest, the beauty, the joy, the sorrow, the melancholy, the shrieks, the screams, and the calls of joy, calling, celebration. It's such a mix. That's history for me. That's yesterday, the moment before. Future is what? There is noise. I want to be. I want the world to be like this. It should be like this, like prospective. And what is present for me is not this moment. It is when past isn't, when future isn't. That's the present for me. And I don't know where there is silence there. Actually, the present is always silent. Nobody listens to the present tense. It's always poor present. It's always waiting for its turn. But there is the clash of the past and the clash with the future. You always miss this moment. And how do you carve a language, a musical language, let's say, or how do I write? And how do you deal with these emotions? Do you? I mean, I don't want to impose my misery on you, but are these concerns when you deal, when you hold the pencil and you have an empty paper in front of you?
I don't want to do a music which is up to date, I want to do a music which is authentic for me, So I don't care of using different means, and I don't care if it is considered new or old. I mean, what is very important is the context. You can also use something old, let's say so, but you put it in another context, and so you see it under another light, and so it's new. Yeah. But I would like to answer musically to this question, if I may.
Yes.
Because I think that we are slowly approaching the end of our conversation, because I am also a little bit tired, Yes. It's not because of my age, but maybe because I didn't sleep well this night. I don't know. But before ending, maybe if you agree, I would like, there is one of the pieces I sent you called Mare,
yes.
Which, as you know, because it means sea.
Yes.
Sea. And it lasts 18 minutes.
I can play that after. Yes.
Maybe you could and it's a piece I like. It's part of a cycle of 4 pieces, but until now I wrote only 2. I have to write the other 2. It's a little bit about the 4 elements, you know, so water, air, fire, and earth, you know. I wrote earth, terra, and mare, which is water. So maybe this could be an answer, a musical answer, because of course I thought of the sea, which is very important to me. I love very much the sea, more than the lake where I'm living, you know. I would like to live at the sea. You see, I'm complaining. At the beginning, we say, "Are you complaining?" But but no, I'm not complaining. But I mean, in any case, I thought of the sea, but not in a idyllic way. You know, the sea is also a world for itself, and inside you have also a lot of life, of different life. You have the big fishes and little fishes, and you have aggressivity, and you have light, but you have also the lack of light, you know. There are in this element there are different elements struggling together, and richness, and contradictions, and how do you say, there are danger, and there is also peace, there is life, but also death. So I see the contradictions of the world, the contradictions of ourselves. We are also a world. Everybody of us is a world. And so I suggest that who wants listen to this piece, and this could be a good conclusion for our beautiful conversation.
Yes, thank you for that. Before we, towards the end, I was wanting to speak about, Karlheinz Stockhausen, and Bernd-Alois and Zimmermann and Paul Dessau. If you can, before we conclude, can we begin with the ones you studied with? Can you share some of your memories and what you thought about the work?
Towards the end of the 60s, I discovered different music, mostly through the radio. The radio was very important, you know. So first I discovered Penderecki, he's a Polish composer. He passed away this year, and I wanted to study with him. But then I discovered Stockhausen and said, no, I want to study with Stockhausen. So he came to Rome at the end of 67 and gave a concert with a new composition of his, and I went there. And the next day I met him in his hotel, and we spoke in German, of course, because German is my second language. And I told him that I would like to study with him. I showed him something I had brought with me, some compositions, and he said, okay, so come to Cologne. So I applied for a scholarship, and I got this scholarship, and I went to Cologne.
I see.
But yeah, and he was, he's a composer of immense talent, but also a very difficult person, very self-centered.
I see.
Yeah, so I didn't like it. I attended the course, and I also wrote a piece there, which was performed by his ensemble. It's a piece based on improvisation, but how could I say it? Can you say guided improvisation?
Yes.
Yeah, guided improvisation. So a piece I like, still I like, yeah. But then I could not come along with him, because he was very authoritative.
Authoritative.
And in this phase where was politically interested, this was a contradiction. So, but at the same time, I met Bernd-Alois Zimmermann, who was a very important German composer. So I started with him. But then, and this was very important to me, I discovered that there were things we thought the same way. But of course it was a completely different generation. He was born in 1917, and Stockhausen was born in 1928, and I was born at the end of 1945, so different generation, of course. But then, because of my political interest, and because I wanted to work on Eisler, as I told before, in the archive, I went to Berlin and decided to study with Paul Dessau. He was born in 1894. So he was already an old man at that time, almost as old as I am now.
4 years older to my grandfather.
You see. And he was also a great personality. And so I am very grateful to my teachers, and also happy that they were so different one from each other, But sometimes the most important teacher is somebody you wouldn't know, because he's not famous, So I would like to name a teacher I met when I was 16. It was a very difficult period for me, because I was a how do you call it? A teenager. I was a teenager, and with many problems, and also musically, and I was not content with with the other composition teacher, and so I met him, and his name is Armando Renzi, who was born in 1918, the same year of my mother, by the way. And he was very important to me, very important, because he gave me self-confidence in myself. This is very important for a teacher, to give self-confidence and so it was like a flower without water, and he was the water, and suddenly I started composing much more easily, and compose my Divertimento Opus 1. I called it Opus 1 at the time. This was back in 1963. And I would like to name another teacher who was also important from an academic point of view, because he prepared me to the final exam in composition. I didn't want to do it, but my father insisted, and by the way, my father was a philosopher.
Fathers.
Yeah, no, a philosopher in the right meaning of the word. He was a professor of philosophy and philosopher. So, but he insisted, that I end my studies with a diploma, and so I did
that's
it.
That's what I said. And fathers are like that. They would always want you to get a degree.
Yeah. This is their job as fathers. Yeah. And then another teacher who was important, who prepared me to the diploma, was Boris Porena. Porena, he's still alive.
I see.
Thanks God. He's now 92. In September, he turns 92 in September, or 93, something like this. So it's important to have good teachers. It's very important.
Very important.
Yeah.
That's very kind of you to share all that. And why do you why do you compose, and whom do you compose for? For yourself, for people, for future? Like you mentioned about Verdi and all of them, like 2 centuries ago. Of course, what you write 2 centuries later, there'll be Luca Lombardi in people's desks, on their desks.
Yeah.
And I predict.
Now I'm making I answer first with a joke, because Miriam, my wife, entered the room
I heard her voice.
A couple of minutes, and she says I compose for her.
Well, I have a date with Miriam next Friday.
Wonderful. Yes. And so she should answer if you ask her that she sings for me. Yeah. Okay.
I'm on her side, so I'm not going to ask her.
Now, becoming more serious, I would say your answer was right. I'm composing first of all for myself, because I like to do it, and so I do it for myself. But of course, I am not as solipsistic. Yeah, I am glad if somebody shares with me my music, and if he or she likes it. So I don't know, because you can't say, generally when you compose, maybe you think of some friends of yours, you like them, or you esteem, you say so, you have you like what they do, and so maybe when I compose, I think, well, I would like that who or she likes what I do. But this is also a risk, because for instance, I never composed for some critics also, because critics are critics, and it's not a beautiful word to be a critic, and sometimes, but I also experience, this is very interesting, that people who didn't like a piece of mine, I am thinking of a composer who also was a teacher of mine. He's a trombone player also, Vinko Globokar. I don't know if you heard the name. It happened that I became his pupil after the death of Zimmermann, of Bernd-Alois Zimmermann. And so Zimmermann had suggested when he was alive that I write a piece for trombone, because Globokar was teaching at the same academy. And I wrote a quartet for 4 trombones. And Zimmermann was still alive when when Globokar conducted this piece with his students, yeah. And we didn't speak about the piece, but many years later we became friends also. He visited me at that time I was living in Milano, and and there was a recording, a disc, a long playing, also with this piece, and it was just had been released, and so he confessed. I have to confess you that when you wrote this piece, I didn't like it so much, but now I heard it again, I listened to it again, and I must say it's a good piece. So, after so many years, I was glad about that. So you have not to write for today, you write what you think that you should write, and maybe many years later, sometimes also centuries later, somebody says, I like it,
Last question. I have a million, but last one today. When you write, are you all the musicians and the conductor on stage, or are you every single listener in the audience?
No, neither nor, because conducting is I am not a conductor. Maybe in a next life I could consider to become also a conductor, because it's a wonderful job, but a very difficult one. And I prefer how do you say, giving my piece to somebody who knows his job and who tries to do the best out of it, yeah. So, and also to be every listener is impossible, because every person listens in a different way, according to his experience, to his knowledge, to his mood this particular day, and he also hears something different. Not everyone hears the same thing, so it's difficult. I'm very, very curious when I speak with the audience after a concert, what they think. But I am aware that it's a different experience for everybody.
Okay. Well, of course, I was not only speaking with the conductor. I mean, when you're writing, because you're writing, every single instrument that is there is your part of your vision. So including the conductor, everybody. It's like for them or for them. Where is Luca in between? Where does he live in the music that when Luca Lombardi's music is played? Where do I find him if I enter a concert hall in an opera house when Luca Lombardi is being played and listened to? Where would I find him?
Where would you find me?
Yeah. 50 years from now.
50 years from now.
Where would I find him? On the stage or in the audience?
On the audience. Yeah, on the audience. And I think, I think that I am a composer. You mentioned that I wrote a considerable number of works, but everything is relative, because if I compare it with Bach, it's only a fragment. Bach composed 2,000 works, but Beethoven composed only 130 32 or 33, but what pieces? Only Haydn composed 100 symphonies, Haydn. But Beethoven composed only 9 symphonies. But what symphonies? Every symphony is a world, as we said. So I am not the composer of 5 works. It's not enough to listen to 5 works of mine and to know me, So I hope that in the future my music will be played and different pieces will be played, and listening to different pieces you have an impression, an idea of who was Luca Lombardi, who was a complex person, maybe full of contradictions, but who tried to write some music which interests people, because that you can hear also not intellectually but also with your bell, with your stomach, and who tried also to give a statement about his time, who was a complex time, but each time is complex, and I'm so happy that I wasn't born in the first half of the 20th century, because who knows what I would have undergone, and so I lived in a rather peaceful time, at least in Europe, not in the other parts of the world. And so, but still, it's a complex time, and I think music should also give complexity, in a right sense. Not music shouldn't be complex because it's good to be complex. No, I think it's good to be simple, but to go back to the simple things of life, and so music should be simple and complex at the same time.
It is. Man is like that. No, man is at the same time
exactly.
an abode of the greatest thought, and a lump of dump.
Exactly.
At the same time.
Exactly. And our life is as simple as it was 3,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago. We have to eat and to sleep. By the way, I was told that you sleep very little. Is it true or is it a legend?
No, it's true. This time it's public. It's like 3 months plus. I'm sleeping after 18 to 27 hours. Then I've slept about 2 hours today. And when I went after my televised debate recording, I went and had tea with Maurizia.
But did you learn it? It was a training, or it's something?
It's just madness. It's just madness. It's been 33 years I've done.
Sometimes I would like to know more about Sikh. You say Sikh, yes. Yeah. I would like to learn more.
Yes, I'm sure we will meet. And I don't know, when you were talking about your 5th piece, I had music occurred. It travels from the lower octave of the piano to the highest. And if you would want an Indian maestro to give you a sequence that you can give a place, I don't know if something like that can occur. But it was a musical response to when you were telling the story of your 5th opera.
You expect an answer to this?
No. I was saying that when you were talking about the 5th opera that you're writing, I had a musical response. So if you would want me to write that line down that goes, I would be very glad to. I had a reacting to listening to you. I had a musical visual.
Yeah, would be great. Would be great.
I will work on that.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Really, it's been very meaningful.
Thank you, Bhai Baldeep, and I hope we meet personally.
I'm looking forward to our meeting. Yeah. I'm writing, I've written 5 works for the first time. I think anybody from South Asia has attempted to write music for multiple instruments, multiple music, linears. It's something polyphonic and more. It's more lines, but I don't know anything about chords. I don't know anything about harmony, deliberately so, because I wanted to write originally. How would I, as a bearer of 5 centuries plus musical legacy, if I'm to write for an orchestra or a symphony, how would I write? How can a rag live simultaneously multiple lives? Is it possible? So those are the paradoxes I've tried to live. In January, I started writing at the International Institute of South Asian Studies, my friends, Dr. Tiziana Lorenzetti and her husband, Dr. Valerio Del Monte's place, and their sister, Federica. So I was sort of protected by them when I was caught in Rome, and I began writing, which I performed for Rai 3, 2 compositions. Early works were performed for La Musica Stanza on the 6th of March, but that was like early with the instruments of Baroque era. But I would love to show them to you once I'm done.
With great pleasure. And let me ask you something, because I found very beautiful your singing before. Very, very beautiful. So are you performing also?
I do.
Because it's...
you never know, maybe I'll sing in your opera.
Yeah, why not? Or in our, first at our place here.
Yes, of course.
We can invite some
of course,
friends and colleagues and people, and it would be great.
I worked on O Sole Mio because Stefano Roffi, my very dear friend, Nello Delgato's friend, and now we are very good friends, who plays a double bass in Rome from Rai 3. It was his wild idea. He says, why don't you work on O Sole Mio? You're from Napoli. No, I said, I'm very much from Napoli. So I worked on that, and I did some research in those days. I analyzed the work, and I loved Enrico Caruso's work more than anybody else. I see later people, Pavarotti and others, they were more playing with it. It was a toy in their hands, but in Enrico Caruso's, it seemed it was real.
I like the Neapolitan songs, and I have a collection of it. And my father, I mentioned that he was a philosopher, but he composed. Also, he didn't know how to write music, but he composed some Neapolitan songs. Very beautiful, I must say. And somebody arranged it for piano and voice and so.
Would love to hear.
Tell me, are you reading music or not?
I can read some, yes. I'm beginning to read now.
No, because I'm figuring out how to use it. You in a future opera of mine.
We can work out. Write and I'll swim in it. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
And I have a good memory. I'll remember by heart what you've done.
Tell me, do you agree to send now to, how do you say, to let listen this composition?
Yes. We will play that. And you want to say goodbyes to everyone now, and so that I will end afterwards.
Okay. So I say goodbye to you and to our listeners, And
today and tomorrow. Listeners, today and tomorrow.
Yeah, soon again. Yeah. Okay.
I'll talk to you
Bye
soon.
bye.
Thank you so much, and love to Miriam.
Thank you.
And I'll be,
Thank you. Bye.
speaking
Bye.
with her next Friday. Bye bye. Thank you. Yeah. Bye. So friends, I have to play as Luca has desired. Here is an 18-minute piece. Oh, it is not there yet. It won't come from there. I'm doing the wrong thing. Well, wow, that was quite something. I really enjoyed this conversation with Luca Lombardi. I think he's just fantastic. One of my finest conversations ever, actually. Insights. You know when you were having a real handshake, innit? You know it, that you're actually shaking hands. This was, sometimes you meet humanity. It can come on 2 feet. Insaniyat, sharafat. It was very, very powerful for me, very meaningful, and hopeful as well. It fills me with hope that that you're not alone in the world, that there are co-dwellers, the actual pillars. There's no bull on which the earth rolls. I'm one of them. Luca was one of them too. Anyway, before I go on a note, it's time for me to share with you what I'm up to tomorrow. We've got 2 Baiṭhaks lined up. Gonna be a tough day for me, and I've got plenty else. And I was just talking to Swami Andriv Nirav. I was telling him that, look, in the minutes that I was listening to the music, I made this poster. It took me less than 9 minutes to make this. Can you imagine? I had a very bad photo of his, which I'll fight with him tomorrow live. Just like 20-30 KB photo, colored, and I turned this photo. Anyway, he is a poet. Oh, not a composer. I'm sorry. That's something that got left behind. So ignore that. Ignore that part as a composer. But he's a poet. And let me write something here for you guys. In fact, here we have, where is the poet part? Here is the poet. He's from Jammu, and he's written in Pothohari, he's written in Punjabi, and so on and so forth. He's very exciting. Thanks to a program that was done in Ludhiana, in which Dr. Amarjit Garewal, poets Jaswant Zafar, Surjit Pathar, and everybody was there. So I had the fortune of listening to him there, and I think, not really friends, but I've admired his work. I wouldn't want to dare call him, I would love to call him my friend. I wonder if you would actually think of me as a friend. I'm such a monster. So this will be at 12 noon tomorrow afternoon, at the strike of noon rather. दोस्तों कल मेरी सवेरे मुलाकात पहली होएगी असी कविता सुनांगे स्वामी अंतर नीरव होनी जम्मू तो जुड़नगे और उन्हां तो असी जम्मू दे कोविड-19 ਦਾ ਵੀ ਹਾਲ ਪੁੱਛਾਂਗੇ ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਵਿਤਾਵਾਂ ਸੁਣਾਂਗੇ ਉਹ ਪੋਠੋਹਾਰੀ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਲਿਖਦੇ ਹਨਗੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਲਿਖਦੇ ਹਨਗੇ ਔਰ ਕਈ ਭਾਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ 'ਚ ਲਿਖਦੇ ਨੇ very exciting poet mehna nu janab Jaswant Zafar, janab Surjit Pathar, Dr. Amarjit Garwal ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਫੰਕਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਸੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਥੋੜਾ ਯਾਦ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਫੰਕਸ਼ਨ ਸੀਗਾ ਪਰ ਲੁਧਿਆਣੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੀ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀ 'ਚ ਹੀ ਸੀ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਉੱਥੇ ਐਗਰੀਕਲਚਰ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀ 'ਚ ਮੈਂ ਰੁਕਿਆ ਸਾਂ ਉਦੋਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਫੰਕਸ਼ਨ ਸੀਗਾ ਔਰ ਦੂਜੀ ਕੱਲ ਸ਼ਾਮ ਦੀ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਵੀ ਬੜੀ ਮਜ਼ੇਦਾਰ ਹੋਏਗੀ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਸੁਣਾਂਗੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਭਾਈ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜਸਵੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਪੌਂਟਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਵਾਲੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਕਰਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਔਰ ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਕਰਾਂਗਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਜਦੋਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਪੂਰੀ ਕਾਲੀ ਦਾੜੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਇੰਨੀ ਲੰਬੀ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਮੇਰੀ ਵੀ ਹੁਣ ਲੰਬੀ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਦਾੜੀ ਪਰ ਭਾਈ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਮਜ਼ੇਦਾਰ ਸ਼ਖਸੀਅਤ ਹਨਗੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤਾਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਸੀ ਬੜੀ ਮਜ਼ੇਦਾਰ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਸੀ ਔਰ ਗਾਉਂਦੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਅੱਛਾ ਨੇ ਰਾਗਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਾਫੀ ਅਧਿਐਨ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਹਿਸ ਪਰਟੀਕੂਲਰ tomorrow by the way we meet at 5 p.m. tomorrow at Saturday July 25th his aarti was very very beautiful I might actually ask him to sing aarti as well tomorrow this is how we have scheduled Saturday and Sunday also is very exciting I will tell you tomorrow I won't tell you today but then from Monday onwards I'll be not meeting every day I'm filling up Friday Saturday Sunday Friday will be Miriam the wife of Luca Lombardi she sings Jewish songs it's quite good I listen to her music and thanks to Roberto Proceda who's introduced me to them recently and so we'll see you tomorrow at noon I'll be joining Anthony at about 11:30 prepare the screen and connections and all that and then evening time at 5 we'll meet and listen to some Gurbani and look at how Bhai Jasbir Singh of Paonta Sahib began learning his music and how has been dedicated at Paonta Sahib quite a place Dasma Padsha Sahib Sri Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj's place, his abode, and I'm really looking forward to the two Baiṭhaks tomorrow. So until tomorrow noon time, Khuda Hafiz, Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Very good night. Buonanotte Italia. Satkartar. Where is the button to finish this? I found it.